underestimate the resistance.
Okay, let me ask you, without getting yourself in trouble, guys, the status of the Russian military, is it a strategic failure or is this a Potemkin military? There was an aide to, I've been sort of dining out on this quote from a former Boris Yeltsin security advisor who said, yeah, the oligarchs told Putin we've got this great military and then pocketed, skimmed off. And I'm thinking, well, if people profit in our defense industry, imagine what you see in Russia. So what is our intelligence saying? Is this a strategic failure or is it a Potemkin military?
I think it's an incompetent military.
Incompetent. Okay.
That's right. I think that they are not able to do what they thought that they were trained to do. I think that you have a lot of young individuals who also don't have their heart in this. Once they've landed on the ground and see that they're going against, some of them are their relatives. This is not what they thought they were doing. They thought they were going into liberate.
It's like Canadians and Americans fighting.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so so they just don't have it. And we're told also it looks like climate change. Meaning that the tanks, that's right, the tanks are stuck in the mud. They thought it would be colder. Yep.
And so they were waiting for I know, you kept hearing they were waiting for the ground to freeze.
That's right.
And the ground just never froze.
But yeah, I would argue it's both. They're far more incompetent than we thought. But I think strategically, militarily, Putin, he tried to bite off more than he could chew. And it was a hubris that General Donahue briefed us on that he tried to taking over the entire country. I don't think he realized what he was getting into and what the resistance could do.
Let's talk about this issue of sort of oil politics, if you will, politics of oil. Look, Stalin, we were on the side of Stalin, whether we like it or not. So I know that in times of war, the Overton window changes. Stalin suddenly is an ally, Hitler's the enemy. Is that what Nicolas Maduro in Saudi Arabia is now, Gregory Meeks?
Well, I think that what we're looking at is a scenario, as far as I'm concerned, where, if we can weed off Nicolas Maduro from being an ally and selling oil and dealing with Russia, it's to our benefit. But we still have to make sure that we stand with our, there's three things that we wanted from Nicolas Maduro. We wanted to make sure that, number one, he went back to the negotiating table. Number two, that we would get our hostages back, or those that were in prison.
Gotten two, there's more.
Gotten two, so we got to continue to work more. And number three, we want to make sure that we pull them away from Russia. And so we're trying to see whether that works, because strategically it makes sense, particularly because we share this hemisphere.
Cold War pragmatism, that's what that sounds like to me. Is this back? And I say this because your party's going to want to have a field day on this stuff, too. And at the same time, Cold War pragmatism matters in a fight between good and evil.
Well, I think this is good versus evil. It's very reminiscent of World War II, my father's war. And that brought Americans together. And I think Putin has done one thing that I think is good, and that he has united NATO, he's united the G7, the EU. He's united Republicans and Democrats. And we all want to do what's
support
best.
This attempt with Venezuela? I noticed you didn't quite jump right in there with it.
I personally think we ought to be producing more energy in this country and not rely on dictators like Maduro in Venezuela or Iran. I think that's a dangerous foreign policy. However, I did agree, and we urged Secretary Blinken to say we're going to stop the importation of Russian oil because it's immoral at the end of the day for us as Americans to fund the killing of innocent civilians. That had to stop, and I'm really proud the administration did that.
And I think we can work it out.
Yeah.
I think that we can do a little bit of both. We're not going to allow, and I'm not going to allow anyone to separate us, on this issue. We know who the bad guy is.
Do you support a rapprochement to Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think that there's conversation that's being had now. Saudi Arabia, and I know what I'm doing is looking at those countries, particularly that may not have voted with the 141 to abstain. I'm going to be calling them to say, hey, look, this is
UAE actually, first they abstained, and then they voted for the one. So they clearly would like to get a little closer to the West.
We want to make sure. I want to, make sure that we are working collectively together in that regard. And I think it's part of my job is to call them on issues. Saudi Arabia, Venezuela. I'm not. Iran is a whole different ball game for me.
I understand that. Yeah. Do you support this rapprochement to Saudis?
I mean,
did they have to cut themselves off from Russia in order to sort of get back into our good graces?
Well, they're a little bit cozy, and we would like for them to provide, these lethal weapons, and particularly the drones.
They have weapons that could help right now.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, but they're a little bit hesitant because of their relationship with the Russians. I think that's something the chairman and I agree on as well.
Absolutely.
We'll be talking to their ambassador.
Congressman Meeks, Congressman McCaul, it's going to be busy times. Thanks you both for taking a few minutes with me.
Thanks for having us.
Up next, we're going to take you to a place where mothers and babies are trying to escape the chaos of war, even for just a moment. You're watching Meet the President.